Hello, can you hear me? Yes? Oh, I got a no and a yes from two people sitting within 5 feet of each other, so that's interesting. Could be louder. It's not, I am not really in control of it. Stand closer. I'm just going to lean like this. We'll just do the whole plenary like this. All right. Welcome, everyone, to the IETF 106 Administrative and Operations Plenary. There's food in the hallway, but all of you made the right choice to come inside rather than eating the food. We had a really great plan for this meeting. We knew that there would be lots of contentious topics on the agenda this week. People may have heard we're trying to encrypt the DNS transports. The spring working group needed 17 hours of meeting time to talk about segment routing. There were so many contentious topics that we knew would be coming. So we planned the meeting in a very hot place, knowing people would bring all their summer clothes, and then we froze the meeting rooms. But the idea being that if you're really cold, you don't want to spend a lot of time arguing, you just want to get to the end so you can go back outside and warm up. But we were thwarted in this plan because the delightful people at the Secretariat brought blankets, handed them out to people, and as a result, we've had to actually debate and fight to the bitter end to achieve the consensus that we all are seeking here in the IETF. But thank you, Secretariat, because you're always looking out for us. Here's the agenda for the plenary tonight. We'll hear from our meeting host first. Then we'll have brief updates from a variety of different parts of the IETF, the IAB, the IRTF, the RFC Series Editor, the NOMCOM, the IETF Executive Director, and the IETF LLC Board. Have a bit of a preview of IETF 107. We have the Jonathan B. Postel Award that will be handed out here, a section in memoriam, a recognition section, and then we'll have our 3 open microphone sessions. So first, I'd like to express a huge thank you to our meeting host for this meeting, Nokia. Nokia recently signed up. Yes, thank you. Nokia recently signed up as one of our global hosts. A global host commits to hosting multiple meetings for the IETF over a multi-year period. So we're super thankful to them for their support. And Kent Wong is gonna talk to us.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the beautiful Singapore. I wanted to say sunny Singapore, but there's a bit of rain this week, and it's very cold in the conference room, right? So welcome to the beautiful Singapore. I hope you enjoy all the meetings so far this week, and enjoy the social event in the Art Science Museum yesterday. Yeah, I think it's kind of cool to have our social event in the museum setting, isn't it? So my name is Kent Wong. I had the IP optic routing group for Nokia for Asia Pacific. Since this is the first time I think the new Nokia hosts this event, I thought I would just make 2 quick points. First one, some of you may ask, what does Nokia have to do with IETF? Don't you guys just make handset phone? Believe me, my colleagues and I still got asked this question from time to time when we told our friends we work for Nokia. It turned out in the last 15, 16 years of industry consolidation, merger, acquisition, where Nokia is now a collection of many different technology and companies. One example, some of the colleagues here in the room and myself, we are from the Nokia IP routing group, which originated its technology from a startup in Silicon Valley called Thymetra. Thymetra got acquired by Alcatel in 2003. Alcatel and Lucent merged in 2006. And Nokia acquired Alcatel-Lucent in 2015. So this is just one example. And of course, through the years, we have many colleagues that coming from Bell Lab, coming from former Alcatel, coming from former Lucent, and former Nokia Siemens, and former Newbridge as well. So, today, if I look around, I think this year we have close to 30 delegates from Nokia joined IETF, and I think involved in many, many different standards and areas. We are committed to IETF and will continue to support IETF activities. So that's the first point. Second point is a bit more personal. So I have a confession to make. I've always wanted to attend IETF, never got the chance, and this is my first time. So I remember 18 years ago when I started in Thymetra, my first project is to implement the graceful restart draft for all the routing protocol in Thymetra. So at that time, it was still a draft. So I sent a lot of email to the IETF mailing list to ask for questions, make some suggestions, always get good response and collaboration spirit. Earlier this week, I did a lookup in the IETF and I found my name was in the announcement section for the OSPF Graceful Restart RFC. So I feel so proud to be associated to IETF in a small way because you are the organization who continue to innovate and continue to bring advance the best of technology to make the internet and make the industry tick. So again, enjoy this week. I'm sure you will get a lot of productive work and breakthrough done this week as always and continue to bring the best of technology to the industry. Thank you very much.
So we have a small token of our appreciation here, a nice plaque for you. Thank you. All right, so next up is the report from myself, the IETF chair, and from the IESG. I'm going to keep it brief this time, trying to keep the plenary a bit snappier. We'll go through some participant statistics and then an update on conduct in the IETF. So here at IETF 106, we have actually one more participant who registered since we created the slide earlier today. So we have 999 people on site. I hear we're going to break 1,000. Sometimes people register super late in the week. So we should be hitting 1,000 by the end of the week. And we have 147 first-time attendees here with us and attendees from 61 different countries, about on par with last time we met in Asia for IETF 103. The end of the year, so I thought it might be nice to do a little bit of a look back over the last couple of years. Here you can see the participation numbers, the attendance numbers for the last 2 years worth of meetings. Each of the last 2 years were fairly similar to each other, and you can see the pattern there. Fairly similar attendance numbers, and we've met in the same region at the same time of year for the last 2 years, so you can compare fairly easily. If we look at the remote participation numbers, we couldn't provide numbers for 106 because a lot of people register and participate later in the week, and we didn't want to give you half of a number. But you can see there, at least over the course of the last year, an upward trend in remote participation. And this is the number that counts any remote participant who attends at least one working group remotely. If we look at the hackathon, we also see a nice upward trend there, becoming a more and more popular event. Didn't quite hit our all-time high that we had in Prague at this meeting, but still more than we had in the summer in Montreal, which is great. And just another word on the hackathon, and those 300 people who are in the room are working on 41 different projects together. Again, this meeting, we had the Hack Demo Happy Hour on Monday night where individuals and teams could show off their work for the rest of the community who may not have been at the hackathon themselves. And the next hackathon that we have planned is same again. That will be the weekend prior to IETF 107 in Vancouver. So for those who haven't had a chance to participate in this thus far, I really encourage you to come and check it out. The hackathon itself is free to attend. And all of that work has really had a major impact on the standards development work that we do in the IETF by creating a feedback loop with implementations and the developer community. So thanks to all who've been participating. So for the last few meetings, we've been talking about conduct and behavior in the IETF. People may be aware that we have a code of conduct in the IETF, and the objective that we strive for is that everybody who comes to participate is treated with dignity, decency, and respect. We want this to be a welcoming place for everyone. Since the last meeting, there's a few different initiatives that I've been working on and that the IESG has been working on. One is ongoing discussions between the area directors and the working group chairs about participant behavior. So collectively as the IESG, we have a set of guidelines and samples of good and bad behavior that we've been using to have one-on-one discussions with our working group chairs about how they can foster a more collaborative and friendly environment. So those conversations are ongoing. We've also been getting some assistance from professional resources, reaching out to a few different folks who work on conduct and conflict management as their profession. And they've been helping to advise us, and we've been investigating other ways to get further support, possibly with some hands-on training, potentially in time for the next meeting. So hoping to continue to work with those people. And then finally, there's been a few updates in the realm of the sergeants at arms. These are the people who serve as the list moderators for IETF at IETF.org. You can see them up on the screen. They are Matthew Miller and Dhruv Doty. Dhruv is new to the team since the last meeting, and he's been really integral, both he and Matt, as we've developed an engagement model for the sergeants at arms. So if you visit the link there, you'll see some standard operating procedures that we've developed for the sergeants at arms, some email templates that we intend to use to make sure that when the sergeants at arms are engaging with people from the IETF community, that they're doing so in a consistent way and communicating clearly about concerns related to behavior on IETF at IETF.org. We did put that out for community review and feedback, and I met this week with the Sergeant at Arms team to start reviewing some of that feedback, so you should be seeing responses to many of those comments in the coming weeks. On a related note, just wanted to summarize for people some of the changes that have occurred recently with respect to mailing lists where general IETF discussion and process discussion happens. So we created a new mailing list since the last IETF meeting called Last Call at IETF.org. And this is where all of the IETF Last Call discussions are now happening about documents that are in Last Call. The moderators are Jared Mouch and Bron Gondwana. We still have IETF at IETF.org, which is for working group charter reviews, general announcements and general technical discussion, and initial kind of process discussion and brainstorming about process issues. And there we have the sergeants at arms who moderate. And then we have a new working group called Gen Dispatch, chartered in the general area to provide a forum for discussion of process proposals that are a little bit more fleshed out. So things might initially begin on IETF at IETF, but eventually they may move to the Gen Dispatch working group where they can be discussed, and then some determination is made about whether they will be AD sponsored or turned into a new working group or how they will be otherwise handled. And for that, we have the working group chairs who are doing the list moderation, and that's Francesca Palambini and Pete Resnick. There's lots of other topics that we covered online. I sent out a report in advance of this meeting to the IETF mailing list, so you can check out, there's more information there, including the fact that we received no appeals in the last period since the last meeting, and reports from many other groups and bodies that are part of the IETF. And with that, I will ask Colin Perkins to come on up.
Okay, thank you, Alyssa. My name is Colin Perkins. I'm the chair of the Internet Research Task Force. The IETF is the research arm of the IETF. We do research, we don't do standards development. The IETF is organized as a number of research groups. We have 14 groups currently. Those highlighted in green on the slide are still to meet this week. So if you're interested in computation in the network, if you're interested in path-aware networking, if you're interested in network management, network coding, or the thing-to-thing research group, please try and come along to these groups later in the week. If you're interested in the differences between the IETF and the IETF, RFC 7418 gives a really nice primer on how the IETF works and how it differs from an IETF working group. And I would encourage you to have a look at that. In addition to the research groups, the IETF runs the Applied Networking Research Workshop in cooperation with ACM SIGCOMM. Those of you who are at the meeting in Montreal earlier in the year will have seen the previous edition of this workshop running. I'm pleased to announce that the 2020 Applied Networking Research Workshop will be running at the Madrid meeting. Will be chaired by Miria and Roland. Many of you, I'm sure, know Miria and probably know Roland as well. If you're interested in hearing more details about this, come talk to me, come talk to Miria, who's also here this week. We'll tell you about this workshop. Look out for the call for papers within the next couple of weeks. Papers will be due most likely in April next year. In addition, we run the Applied Networking Research Prize in conjunction with the Internet Society. The Applied Networking Research Prize is awarded for recent results in applied networking research that are potentially relevant for transitioning into the standards community, into shipping products that are potentially of interest to this community, both the IETF and the IETF communities. We made 5 awards this year to Florian Streibelt, to Brandon Schlinker, to Netta Rosenschiff, to TJ Chung, and at this meeting earlier this week to Weiteng Cheng in the IETF Open Meeting. We've also have one award which has been deferred and will be awarded next year. Nominations for the 2020 Applied Networking Research Prize are open. If you've read any interesting papers, looking in the area of applied networking research, please consider nominating them. The link is on the slide. The nomination deadline is this Sunday, the 24th of November. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is the report from the Internet Architecture Board. One of the jobs of the IAB is to manage appointments to external bodies on behalf of the IETF community. Among the most important of them made in the most recent period was the reappointment of Adrian Farrell as independent submissions editor. We thank Adrian for his 2 years of service so far and for his willingness to stand for an additional term. Thanks very much to Adrian. We have also appointed Peter Koch to the ICANN NomCom, and we're seeking nominations for the Internet Society Board of Trustees. Since our email to the community, you will also see a new request. We are also seeking nominations for the ICANN Governance Working Group. The GWG is part of the mechanism by which ICANN and the Root Server System Advisory Committee are putting together a new governance structure for the Root Server System. Another thing the IAB does is make occasional public statements. There was one such public statement during this period, calling out the unintended consequences of policy and regulatory proposals. This was originally inspired by the statement that went directly to the Australian government, but has been broadened and made more general so that we don't have to make specific statements to individual governments in the future. I'm happy to report, like the ISG, there were no appeals in this period. During this period, a number of documents moved to the RFC editor. The first 4 of these are a cluster that came out of the IETF IASA 2 process. Because the documents they were updating were on the IEB stream, they moved from IASA 2 into the IEB process for community review and approval, and they were all approved during this past period. The last one here was draft IEB 50 years, which was Heather's reflections on the first 50 years of the RFC series. There are a number of other documents that are either in preparation or currently in community review, which is the equivalent of last call. Draft IEB for the users, the internet is for end users, the harmful consequences of the robustness principle, principles for operation of internet assigned numbers authority registries, and long-term viability of protocol extension mechanisms. We look forward to your comments on those either directly to the IEB or to the architecture discuss list. There are 2 workshop reports currently in preparation. The first is for the Design Expectations versus Deployment Realities, or DEDR workshop, and the second is for the Exploring Synergy Between Content Aggregation and the Publisher Ecosystem, or ESCAPE workshop. Lastly, as all of you know, the IEB has a number of programs, among them RSOC as a management program. The IEB received an SOW from RSOC for the temporary RFC editor project manager after their community consultation during this past period, and has transmitted it to the IETF LLC on October 2nd. This has now moved into a different phase of the SOW and RFP process than is managed by the IEB, but just for your information, the proposals received are being considered now with a proposed start in January. In addition, the IEB is assisting Heather on the output of the RSE-ME community discussions, and she is up next to tell you more about this and other RFC editor topics.
You're all so quiet. Did you hibernate in the cold? No? Okay. Heather Flanagan, RFC series editor for a little while. I'm just going to go through a couple of quick updates. So, you know what I'm going to ask. How many of you are aware that we're working on changing the RFC format? Like some? Well, if you're not, we need to talk because it's already happened. So we are not in the process of, we have in fact changed the RFC format. And with the publication of RFC 8651 on October 8th, we are now in the process of, we have this huge corpus of documents that all need to be converted. Everything that was in Auth 48 has been converted. And we're now going through RFC editor and the edit queue and on all those other things to get them all into V3. And oh, we're finding so many lovely edge cases of things that we have to iterate on to figure out what's the right thing with the tool, et cetera, et cetera. This is one of the reasons, as you may recall from conversations earlier this year, that the service level agreement is essentially on hold until April so that we can work through this process and then try and get caught up on things. If you would like to help, because one of the things that makes this challenge, as I mentioned, we have a nice large corpus of material, including things like cluster 238. It came in at the same time the format was going live, so did cluster 340. That's a lot of documents. If you have a document in queue that isn't in Auth 48 and you would like to perhaps reach out to the RFC editor and say, we're willing to help do the work to convert this to V3, please drop them a note and tell them that. If you want to know a little bit more information as to what would you be getting yourself into if you made such a marvelous request, I strongly suggest you look at the FAQ that's linked to on these slides. It answers a lot of questions that people have had about, well, what about tables? What about diagrams? What about all these other things? So it's a very important resource for you, and I hope you all become familiar with it. I did not name this session, by the way, the RSE-ME. No, I didn't do that. But the session was held yesterday morning. And this was sort of the culmination of a set of virtual calls. We had 3 in different time zones to get as many people involved as we could. The result of these conversations held on the calls, in the session, and on the RFC interest mailing list is to recommend establishing an open IAB program that would basically drive consensus in the community of interest around any changes to the RFC editor model. If you would like to know more about that, I've already updated the draft based on the feedback in the session. That got posted this afternoon, so that's out there. And if you have feedback on that in terms of what's being proposed for moving this conversation forward, now would be a really good time to share it. Because my hope is that the draft is reasonably complete. It's not going to be published as an RFC, but it's something that I would like to be able to hand off to the IB at the earliest possible moment so that they can actually act on the recommendations this year. I mentioned the service level agreement being on hold until April. How many of you know that for everything V2 and earlier, there's now annotated RFCs that have been annotated with verified errata? Some of you know that. Most of you are just staring at me. Well, guess what? They are there. You can get to them via the data tracker. If you know that there is an RFC that has errata and they're not showing, make sure that the errata are verified, not hold for document update, not anything like that. And those are out there. We do not have those for V3 yet because there's just not that many V3 documents at this point. And it require a little bit of a different work and a different tool chain to do that. So it is expected later. And with that, that is my last 5 minutes of fame as the RFC series editor. I wish you all the very, very best going forward. And I will come up with the IB for questions later. Thank you.
Makes a lot of noise walking up here. All right. This is the NOMCOM update for this year. The first thing about NOMCOM is we can't talk about NOMCOM. Actually, no, we can't talk about NOMCOM. All right, Singapore. So last IETF, we assembled the group of folks who will work for the community to select for the roles coming up this year. This NOMCOM, which is 106, where we do all the interviews. So that's us. We look like silhouettes when we're in the room, and we're interviewing all the folks who put their names forward and who are willing to serve the community. This is a kind of a view of the process. We got the NOMCOM committee together previously, back in the early summer. We had a call for nominees as we approach August into September. We started a call for feedback a number of weeks ago, and the green area is where we are now, where we're looking for feedback. So let me remind everyone, we're looking for feedback. We need lots and lots of feedback. We need to know what you guys think of all the nominees so we can make the best selection possible for the community. And once we're finished the feedback period and the interview period, we move on to deliberations. So just in case you don't know where to provide the feedback, in the data tracker, you can move on to a web page that looks just like that. Under the NOMCOM 2019 section, there is a section there you can click on feedback, and you can provide your feedback on all the nominees, some of the nominees, whatever you like. And we did come here ready to work. We're working together. The NOMCOM is very excited. There's lots of opinions. We're moving forward. We're interviewing all the folks. We're having a great time. So who's on the NOMCOM? If the NOMCOM members don't mind standing up to show everybody who you are, these are the folks. I'm not sure who's all there. Here they are. These are the ones who have taken their time. They've stopped doing all their other work, not all their other work, and they're here to take your feedback. Please, please, please reach out to them in the hallways. They have orange dots. The best way to know what happens at the IETF is to be part of the NOMCOM. You learn a lot about the various positions, about their various roles. It's a great experience. And we feed you. So don't forget that. There's so much food, we're all going to gain 5 pounds. So there's a number of positions. We have ISG positions and we have IAB positions available for this cycle. Those are 2 years. Those are for 2 years. And this year, we're going to, this is the start of the refilling of the LLC and the trust positions. And those are 3-year moving forward. Last year was the one and only year where we had a 1, a 2, and a 3-year as we fed in and primed those new positions. But moving forward, every year the NOMCOM will refill one of the outgoing positions, both for the board, the LLC, and for the IETF trust. So, eye chart. No, I'll just highlight a couple of things. I was told everyone likes numbers, so I have some numbers here. As I noted in the gray box areas, LLC board, IETF, there was 3 positions last year. Moving forward, we're going to have 1. So what are all these other numbers? There's been a lot of discussion about, hey, how many people do we have for the various positions? Just to highlight a couple of things that we've noticed within the NOMCOM, just for the community to be aware. One good news is we had an amazing number of nominations for transport this time around. It was very, very high. However, not as many accepts. So I think for every 15 people we nominate, 1 might actually accept. So we need 45 next year if we want to get 3. All right, the purple and the black triangles, or not triangles, sorry, squares, is one thing we've noticed is sometimes when there is an incumbent who also wants to, who continues to go forward, there's sometimes tends to be less people willing to put their name forward for that position. That's one thing we've noticed. I'm not going to put any qualitative analysis into that. However, I think it's important for folks to know that even incumbents want to make sure that we have other people that are ready to take the position anyhow. It's good to be part of the process. It's good to go through the process. And we don't know. We always want the best folks for the roles. So I would, don't let incumbency block one from, putting your name forward and accepting the opportunity to serve the community in a greater capacity. It's very important. So what can you do? Feedback. I said it a few times, I'll say it again. We need feedback. Please, please, please provide your feedback. It's very, very important. Nominate people. Next time around, obviously we're too late this year, but nominate yourself. Sometimes someone doesn't know that you are willing to put your name forward. So please nominate yourself if that's what it takes. Let the community know you're willing to take a position. And that way, if you have an opinion, you can help in the leadership roles. And if you want to really, really help the community, be part of leadership. That's it. Oh, sorry.
You should tell people the deadline for feedback because it's very close.
Thank you. See? So the deadline for feedback, go ahead.
Börje Hjulman Eriksson, part of the NOMCOM.
Yes. He's keeping us on our toes. So the end of the day, Thursday, is the last opportunity for feedback. So please, 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 you have another whole day and a few hours to get that in. So if you have anything to say, please enter that in. Okay, I think now I'm finished. Okay. Thank you, Börje. Yeah.
Hello. So I'm Jay Daly. I'm the new IETF Executive Director, and I'm sure you know Portia, who is the outgoing interim IETF Executive Director. Before I start with the slides, I just want to give a little thank you to some people. So 4 weeks into this role, and I've had considerable support getting myself acquainted with some arcane customs, with lots of different processes, with some unusual documents and various other things. So I've had fantastic support, thank you very much, from Portia particularly, been very efficient, from the Secretariat, who have been absolutely spectacular, from Alyssa, who's gone out of her way to give me significant time to help with things, and from the many members of the community that I've come across and spoken to. So thank you. It's been very welcoming and a very nice way to start off in a new job. It will probably all go to custard from now, but up to now it's been wonderful. Thank you. So, first of all, I want to thank our global host, Nokia, who have gone out of their way to make this a successful meeting. Could I please ask you all to give them a round of applause? Thank them. You may want to keep off your keyboards. You will be clapping a lot for the next couple of minutes. So, I'd also like you to thank ICANN, our hackathon sponsor, another successful part of the meeting, as we heard earlier. The welcome reception, which I particularly enjoyed, was supported by Mora Telindo, a broadband company who we'll also hear about later as well. So can we please thank them very much? As you know, we are in Singapore, and we were supported ably by the Singapore Exhibition and Convention Bureau. And I think that they've gone out of their way to make this a particularly nice event. So please thank them as well. Of course, is the home of gin, and I do hope you've all experienced that. So our connectivity sponsors, Equinix, Mora Telindo and NTT, once again have gone out of their way to deliver fantastic bandwidth to us. Please thank all of those. And our equipment sponsors, when I found out how much money and how much equipment they give us, I was astonished. It is really quite something they are giving us. So please thank them very much, Cisco and Juniper. And our sisters program sponsors also deserve a thank you. That is Comcast and Fastly. Thank you very much. So for the code sprint, the IETF data tracker enhancements, we had a number of people turn up and who are again very useful. This continues to be an ongoing feature of the meetings. So thank you very much to those people who gave their time to help with data tracker. The NOC team, I am also very impressed by. I have been in there and they have explained everything in great detail and I have come away with my head buzzing. That has been remarkable. I have resisted the temptation to tell them how to do things differently, so that has been marvellous. Line Speed, Meet Echo and all of the volunteers really are quite dedicated, and I think the fact that they are locked away during the daytime means that we don't often see how well they do. So thank you to them as well. So for IETF 107 in Vancouver, our host will be Huawei. So please thank them for agreeing to sponsor that meeting. Have a number of sponsorship opportunities available. So everybody I know and have known for some time, I'm going to be stealing your wallets at some point. Thank you very much. So finally then on thank yous, well actually there may be more. We need to thank our global hosts. So these are people who have made long-term commitments to support the IETF, which really is quite something in this day and age, who are giving us that money to ensure the longevity of the IETF and who can make our lives a lot easier because we know we have that long-term funding. So we have Cisco, Juniper, Comcast, NBC Universal, Ericsson and Nokia. Thank you all very much as well. Future meeting venues, we have a number of these pinned down. Now, just to note that beginning in 2022, you probably know this better than me, we are shifting the order of the regions so that Asia is the first region in the year. This is where we stand so far. We're currently still looking for sponsors for some of these meetings, and we are still looking at venues and cities, so we can't yet fill this in fully, but that will be filled in over time and you'll hear about that. Right, so for this meeting, we have had, these are the figures to show you the number of participants. Revenue is above budget. Don't get excited. It's not going to be an open bar. Some years and sometimes it's under, sometimes it's over. It's very good that it's over, but it's we have to look at it over a longer term prospect for that. But it's still very good for this meeting. Registration breakdown, as you've heard. We still have, we have a breakdown across there of people. I'll leave that for you to have a look at. I think one of the things I will be looking at is better data here for the ISG so that they're able to look at this and do something more valuable with it. But for now, this is simply a table for you. So that's it. Thank you very much. There will be proper thanks to Portia and the board session. But thank you all for making my first time pleasant. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'm Jason Livingood here from the LLC board to give an update. So this is the board. I believe at least Peter is remotely participating from his home in Belgium. Maya planned to, but she's ill at the moment, and Alyssa and Sean are obviously here. We have some upcoming board meetings. I won't go through the details here. What we've been trying to do is basically publish several months in advance when the board meetings are, and we invite people to participate. When we hold some of those coincident with IETF meetings or ICANN meetings or other meetings, we welcome people to attend in person as well. So recent work completed. We have been busy since the last meeting, have importantly gotten some big things done. First, obviously hired a permanent executive director, Jay, who just spoke a moment ago. We also recently finalized the first round of LLC policies, and in addition, we filed on the website all of the conflict of interest policies or filings, excuse me, for the board members, including 2 additional memos pertaining to them, and some of that will be updated as things change. We also had the executive director announce contract awards for a number of the RFPs that have been put out, including CPA that will be in place before end of year, automatic schedule builder, and we're in the midst of finalizing the Secretariat Services RFP and a number of others. And lastly, we are just in the process of publishing and wrapping up our 2020 budget, which is really the first time that we've been on top of what our expenses actually look like. And we know a number of those from the past few months, so that's important as well. We certainly sent a welcome email out and did a rollout announcing Jay joining the organization. We're delighted that he's come to work here, so thank him for that. And Portia, if you could come up, please. I wanted to take a moment, excuse me, to really extend our thanks to Portia. So she has served here as executive director since 2017, so about 2 years, and really provided a bridge from the IOC or the original IASA model to the new model, and helped us navigate through a time of incredible administrative and legal uncertainty, and did that with aplomb. So we really appreciate her efforts. She's continuing through the end of the year to help that transition occur. So I'd like to please recognize Portia for the great work she's done. And we have a couple things, because we know that the IETF can be a real pain in the ass, or pain in the back, or pain in the neck. We got you a gift at the Mandarin Oriental in Washington, D.C. If you'd like to have a massage or something like that, try to work all the stress of dealing with us out. So we thank you for that. And we have a nice plaque, a newly redesigned one. So we've got this one here. Thank you very much. So what's coming next between now and the next meeting? First, while we announce the policies, that doesn't mean that they're really enforced. So we have to implement them, which essentially means roll them out and then have a compliance program to ensure that we comply with them. And so expect to hear more news on those things soon. We have a number of RFPs that need to be wrapped up, basically contracts that need to be done. So Jay's on top of that with legal counsel. So we're pleased that that will close out by end of year. And then finalize the 2020 budget. That should occur over the next couple of weeks. So don't anticipate any issues there. And then as we shift focus to next year, we'll have a face-to-face meeting in the first quarter. And the focus of that will be to extend the initial strategic assessment that we did and focus a little bit more on things like fundraising and sponsorship and the endowment, and really sort of go back to square one and say, you know, what's our objective for each of these activities and where do we want to go over the next few years? How do we want to resource them so that we can, say, increase fundraising or sponsorship or what have you? So that's an important one. And then finally, and we're almost all the way through this, but finalizing an investment policy statement, basically a guide to how things like our reserve funds and our endowment are invested to manage those resources. So nothing magical there. That should be done fairly soon. This is, we're happy during the question and answer time to take questions here. This is a quick snapshot and it's an eye chart. I'm not going to go through everything. This is for us a bit of a transitional year because we came in as a board in the March timeframe with a budget that was developed before we really had a clear sense of costs. And in a number of cases, we've had delays from when we projected bringing resources on. And so that caused, in some cases, costs to be a little bit lower. In other cases, you know, things ended up being a little bit more expensive than we thought. So all those things netted out, we think that our 2020 budget will be a little bit more accurate in those respects because we've got real working data to go from. And of course, lots of ways to contact us. We're happy to have your involvement and definitely encourage anyone to attend our regular board meetings. So I think with that, thank you very much, and we'll see you on the stage later on. Thank you.
So just wanted to give a quick preview of IETF 107. Anybody who's had a great time here should think about joining us again in March. IETF 107 will take place in Vancouver, March 21 to 27. And we've been very pleased to secure a host for that meeting in Huawei. So please join me in thanking Huawei for signing up to sponsor the IETF. This will be the fourth meeting that Huawei has hosted for the IETF, and they also hosted the last meeting that we had in Vancouver, IETF 88. So we're very pleased to have their support, and they're quite pleased to be able to provide it to us. And next up, we have the Postel Award.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Andrew Sullivan. I'm the president and CEO of the Intranet Society, and we are the presenters of the Jonathan B. Postel Award. This is a service award that was created to honor the memory of John Postel. I didn't know John Postel, but many of you did. He is sometimes invoked as something of a saint or a patron of in various arguments. I am told reliably that he was, however, a truly and deeply human person who consistently gave his all for the benefit of the internet. He was, of course, the first editor of the RFC series. He authored and co-authored dozens of hundreds of RFCs, first director of IANA, etc. But I think most importantly, he provided us with this tradition of working on behalf of the internet. I think that the internet is a marvelously human technology. It's something, you know, it's very easy to forget that we're really working here on behalf of humanity. And it's something that I kind of wake up every day and I can't believe that I get to participate in this along with so many other people. And I think that that's the reason that the Postel Award was established. The Internet Society has this award to honor people and organizations who, like Postel, made these outstanding contributions in service to the data communications community. And there is a prize, there is a crystal trophy that is right here, and there is also a US dollar, $20,000 prize. There are many awardees. Many of these are people that, that we all know, and of course, they have contributed consistently to the development of the internet. And I think that this long tradition allows us to reflect on how it is that we get the internet. We get it as a collaborative effort, something that we do together. The fact that we do this thing together means that humans have to contribute to one another and as a collective effort in order to do that. This year's awardee is Alain Aina. Many of you know Alain, as we can tell, and he has been a contributor to the internet community for many, many years. He is one of the people who brought IP to Africa in the first place. He is one of the people who helped in the creation of Afrinic and continues to this very day working on education and research networks, contributing to the development of this, for everyone. And I think that that is one of the most beautiful things. So I want to thank him and invite him forward to say a few words. Alain.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. I am delighted to be here today as Jonathan Postel Awardee 2019. My name is Alain Ayina, but some simply call me Alain Ayana. So it works, especially in this community. So many people has issues spelling my last name. They say Ayana, so it works. So in this community, I come from Africa, and I'm someone who had opportunity to put his fingers in bulletin board system, UUCPs, TCP/IP, as Andrew just said, establishing the first connectivity in Togo, Liberia, Guinea-Conakry, etc., etc. I've been involved also in building the ecosystem in Africa. And these days, I'm devoting my time building research and education network, because this ecosystem, the RAN ecosystem, is lagging behind and not playing the role we really expect from them in terms of bringing engineers, creating a new space for community engagement, etc., etc. But what brought me here today, I believe, is more the impact of my journey than the journey itself. I embraced the technologies in mid-90s, where courage and determination were needed to build the knowledge, to convince people, to let you demonstrate and do what you think needed for people to move a bit and to connect and talk to each other. It was also important to really push fight. Go places, talk to government, talk to civil society that Africa cannot stay away from what was going on at that time. You all know Africa, how government, how these things are very important, and for them, internet was a no-go, so we have to do that at that time. Dedications and self-led commitment, the sense of services and pragmatism were resources which empowered and excited me during all this experience. They are still driving me today. These qualities and attitudes come to mind when we think of Dr. John Postel. The long walk to technologies encountered difficulties and issues as expected, but we seem programmed to never give up. We contributed to history, helped build a foundation by continuously enabling and empowering many African fellows and beyond. All along, we share our patience, spread the virus we incubated by embarking others, and we continue to inspire many more today. Many thanks to those who were part of these journeys. I see some in this room. Thank you very much. I do ask for permission to conclude by giving a special thanks to someone who many of us know very well, Professor Nikweno, who made the long trip to be here tonight. Thanks, Prof, for tirelessly monitoring the flame in me, always moving the target and renewing the cause, and for continuously remind us about the unfinished and the unstarted businesses of internet on the continent. Thank you all.
Okay, I'm gonna ask Bob if you can come on up. So, sadly, we lost a few people from our community since the last IETF meeting, and Bob here is going to come up and recognize Sally Floyd first.
Yeah, Sally was someone who may not have wanted me to be the person that said this. We had our run-ins, but I wanted to give tribute to her for how much I learned from her and how much everyone else learned from her, and not just from her research, but from the way she conducted her research and the way she explained that research as well. Her explanation style is what I remember most. But for those of you that don't know who Sally was, because she's not been around for some time now, she retired in 2009. She was someone who knitted together the research community and the IETF and the IAB. She retired 2007, she retired from active life here 2007. If any of you have heard of RED, the random early detection algorithm, that was Sally and Van Jacobson. I tried to find out which it was more of, but they were working together. And that, along with many of our other research papers, put her at the point 2 years before she retired in the top 10 cited researchers in the whole of computer science. So, that's quite something. It's not just in networking. She introduced the network simulator NS2. She was one of the leads on that and helped also to bring in NS3 afterwards. And she also was the author on many RFCs here. You can go and look at her list, but if I pick out, I guess she's most known for her crusade for careful congestion control, and she wrote many RFCs on that. She was on the IAB and wrote a number of policy RFCs. Her work on ECN, explicit congestion notification, and mostly, I guess, was all her work on TCP. All the parts of TCP that were brought in over the years to improve it, a lot of that was Sally. So, but as I said, it was her explanations that I remember most. She'd sort of put aside time to go and sit on a sofa with you and explain how you needed to think about something, and how to understand something more deeply. And she'd come to the mic in a conference and she'd always explain to the audience the whole background before she gave the comment about something. She never assumed that everyone knew everything. So I particularly wanted to just say that I think the internet's a lot safer because of Sally. And you have to think what would have happened without her. Everything she did about congestion control particularly, if she had not done that, we might not have had the internet we've got now. And just that ramming home continually how important it was, even though it's something that had never, after the congestion collapses in the 80s, it is something that never happened. You have to keep remembering what never happened so it doesn't happen. And the other point someone made to me was also all the people who she explained to, she would put so much time into that. You think if those people had not have listened to her, how many dangerous things would have happened on the internet because of all the stupid research that she stopped. Right? Okay? And so that is why the internet's a safer place without Sally. And this chap here is going to come on next. His comment, when I asked him what he would say in one sentence about her, he said, "She walks on water."
Also, I'm going to back up a little bit. I have been to many CCNA classes and that kind of thing during my time at Cisco and educational environments throughout the world. And everywhere that I would go, I would have the teacher, the professor, come to me and say, "Would you spend the lunch break with the women in my class? Because they think there is no place for women in IT." And I actually had a talk that I would show them. And I would say, "Let me introduce you to a few of my friends." And Sally was an important one in that talk. Just the expertise and the persona and all that she brought to the party was very important. Huh? Oh, I have to actually use the mic. Okay. So now let me talk about one more, Keith McClory. The SNMP protocol was the outcome of the doctoral research done by Marshall Rose. It's brought to the IETF with 4 major architects behind it, Marshall and Jeff Case and Steve Waldbusser and Keith. Now, I went around and I spoke with, or I emailed with various people who knew Keith and knew his contributions and asked them for comments. And if there was one thing that I heard from every single one of them is that he was a gentleman and a very good engineer. So I've included those comments on the slides here. Andy Bierman, I note, is on the Meet Echo tonight. So Andy's comment, and one that I heard from many, was that he was completely trusted by the community. If they had made comments on a document and something needed to happen to it, if Keith understood them, and he always did, once Keith understood them, the right thing would happen, and he was trusted with it, which is an important thing. Keith made a huge contribution in this community.
Stan Radliff, who was the Monet Working Group Chair, passed away on October 22nd of this year. I started working with Stan probably around 20 years ago. His team and I started working on something that was called ad hoc networking. At the time, I didn't know what it was, so we had the pleasure of having him explain to us and introduce all of us to that world of infrastructureless, completely distributed networking. At the beginning of our collaboration, we didn't know each other very well, but we quickly, the whole team, got to know him, got to know his sense of humor, self-deprecating, sarcastic, and sometimes even politically correct. He was an engineer that always put his abilities down. He didn't want to be the center of attention, but it was clear from the beginning that he would be what he became. He became a pillar of the ad hoc community. He will be missed by a whole industry. He made very important contributions, among them DLEP, and he's also a co-author of AODB version 2. He was the chair of the Monet Working Group for many, many years, during probably the most productive time of the working group, but also the most contentious time in the working group. He was always there to provide his technical opinion, to bring the working group forward, to get it to consensus, to try to move it along and have fruitful discussions all the time. Over the last couple of years, the working group has been slowing down. So maybe for the last 4 or 5 months, he was the only chair in the Monet Working Group. We last had a conversation on October 21st, the day before he died. And we talked about the meeting here in Singapore, about where he wanted to take the working group and what we were planning to do here. So today, we actually had the meeting, the Monet meeting, right before the plenary. And we did probably what Stan would have wanted to do many times, especially during the contentious times of the working group. We had a short meeting, went through the document updates, and then we went to the bar. We had a Stan Radliff tribute bar-off, a side meeting at an actual bar. It was great. We told stories about Stan, self-deprecating, sarcastic, and some actually politically correct. We drank beer that Stan would actually choose from a town in Germany called Fuking. I have to be very careful how I say that word. It's a hell beer. You can put 2 and 2 together, which in German, I think it means like a pale lager or something like that. His closest friends from the working group and the IETF were there. We will all miss him. I've heard stories of ADs closing working groups while they're standing up here on the stage. Most of them before they leave the IAG. I have my iPad here. I'm not going to close the working group. Don't worry. But I still haven't gotten the courage to take Stan off the list of chairs in the money working group. So that's what I'm doing right now. We're going to miss Stan in the IETF, in the industry. He was a good friend. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's have a moment of silence to remember these three individuals. Thank you. And thank you, Bob and Fred. Oh, he's already here. Great. So we're going to move on to the recognition portion of the plenary.
Hi, I'm Adrian Farrell, and currently I'm serving as the independent submissions editor. And it's my task this evening to thank Heather. So Heather, can we have you up here so that we can embarrass you publicly? I was going to do some history of the RFC series editor and so on, but I went for a reference to a draft that Heather had written, and frankly, you might as well read her draft because I won't do nearly as good job. Some observations about Heather then. Largely speaking, I'm in awe of Heather, and this is not simply because my wife is an editor. I have a long list of things to say about you, don't worry. Heather is, I think, unflappable. At least she appears to be. She sort of drifts around serenely like a swan, and maybe underneath her legs are flapping, but we really don't notice that. And I think she sort of parachuted into our very, very strange environment. We're an odd set of people. I wouldn't say that we're easy to get on with in a work sense, and it's not an easy environment to enter. But Heather seemed to just drop in and was immediately working and being effective. In particular, she inherited two issues that had been hanging over us for absolutely forever. The fact that we publish our documents in ASCII and we really ought to go a bit beyond that, and that our publication format was maybe a little rusty and old. And those seem like insurmountable problems. They've been there forever, but Heather just got on with it. And as you saw from her slides earlier, progress has been made. Heather is always polite, at least she's always polite to me, and she always appears to be polite to everybody else. She's charming and totally and absolutely professional, and every time I see her in a difficult situation dealing with it, I'm just blown away by how she manages to remain calm and professional. She's been a great asset to us, and I find it hard to imagine the IETF without her, but although she will be missed, we thank her and hope she will do well in her new work. And I think me give it. It's from Alyssa, but anyway. You don't think that, it's in there. Yeah.
Thank you. It's been a character building experience.
Thank you. And we're on to the IAB open microphone session. So if the IAB members could come on up.
Eric, why don't we start with you with introductions?
Eric Mark, Jeff Tansura, Wes Hardiker.
I'm Colin Perkins.
Alyssa Cooper.
Seth Hardy.
Random stranger.
Melinda Shore.
Jamili. Brian Trammell.
Stephen Farrell. Mark Nottingham.
Martin Thompson.
Christian Wiedema.
Jari Ark.
The mic lines are up.
Sarah Banks. I don't have a question. I really just wanted to stand at the microphone one last time and say thank you to Heather Flanagan. You've made my 6 years on the RSOC an absolute dream. I couldn't have asked for better. I think what you've given to the IETF, since I didn't have any of that past history, I mean, no disrespect to everybody who came before you, but for anybody who comes after you, they have extremely large shoes to fill. I appreciate the advice that I've gotten, maybe received, mostly gotten. And if the C in RSOC stood for classy, then you would definitely put the class in classy. I'll miss you. Thank you.
Job Snyders, NTT, first-time NomCom member. It's very exciting that I get to have a hand in replacing 6 of you. I wanted to reflect a little bit on my NomCom experiences so far and perhaps ask for some help going forward. It has been a very, very rewarding experience to be on the NomCom so far. Throughout my professional work, I am mostly limited to the internet routing side of things, and in interviewing the many candidates that have made themselves available to be considered candidates for the various different boards, I've had a phenomenal insight into how the IETF works, what IAB does, how IESG even works. Very, very insightful and cool. And in the current set of nominees, there's a fantastic set of candidates available for AIB positions. If I look at IESG nominees, for some of the positions, it's fairly challenging to make good choices when there is a lack of choices. And actually, maybe I should now move to this community, because the reason we have a lack of choices is that there has been a lack of nominations by you and me. So what is it we can do to encourage more participation in the leadership roles for the functions that need to be appointed to people? And also part of that process is that people leave feedback, and I've observed that many, many people have provided feedback through the online tool or conversations in hallways or coming to the NomCom office. That is great. I'm very happy with that. But I want us to think in the next 12 months how next year we can make sure that there is not only that there is actually more choice, so we can make sure that we make the best possible choices. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you for your comments.
Phil Baker. A situation arose in a different standards organization that has caused me some concern as to practice in IETF. In particular, I noticed that Notewell has no mention of antitrust. And there are two reasons here. One is the protection of the organization. If things pan out as I expect them to do in that case, which at this point I expect to become a federal case, there will be fingers being pointed and it will become very serious. And I think that it behooves us to at least warn people that even if you're not officially speaking for your organization, if you get up to a microphone and you say, if your company offers this service to various people, then we will destroy your business. Oh yes. Oh yes. Then that is not only putting your employer at risk, it is putting you at risk. And I don't want to get into the details of that situation, but I think that we need to take this seriously.
First, let me say I'm relieved that this is all happening in a different SDO. That's very good news indeed. Second, I'd like to just point out that the Notewell and the documents which it refers to are all actually published on the IETF stream, and therefore it's really the ISG who should take note of your comments. The mic lines are open. Is there anybody else with a comment or a question for the IAB? Thank you very much. We'll move on.
If the LLC board could come on up.
All right, we're happy to take questions. There's one in the back.
Hi, Mike St. John's. Just one quick question. Since we put in the new rate structure, how many of the early registrations represent people who didn't actually end up showing up? Do you have any idea what those numbers are? I mean, how much money did we take in just gratis?
That's an excellent question that I don't think we know the immediate answer to. So let us take an action item to go investigate that.
Thanks.
Get back to you. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, Brian Carpenter.
Hi, Brian.
Thanks for the report earlier. I'm not trying to be provocative, but as you know, the previous thing we had, the IOC, dug its own grave by getting far too deep into micromanagement. So I'd like to know, now that you have a permanent executive director in place, what the board is going to do to make sure he does the management and you do the strategy.
Well, I think that's one of our key jobs is to make sure that that's the case. And we've set those expectations with Jay from the start, and I think it's going to be a regular topic of conversation to ensure that we are doing so. I think certainly habits have to be set with the new executive director. Yeah, Alyssa, you want to
add a bit of color on that? Jay started 4 weeks ago, and for the last 3 weeks, I have consistently found myself saying, please go ask Jay, which has been delightful. So hoping to continue that as we go forward.
Bob? Oh, yeah.
Shivan Sahib. So I learned this IETF meeting that the one-day guest pass program that allowed local researchers and academics to attend the IETF for free for 1 day, the program was discontinued. And as a co-chair of a research group, we have relied on this program to get local researchers to come and give presentations. So I understand some of the reasons behind why this was done. Just wondering why it was not announced, and also wondering like if there's a plan for like having something similar, because it is. I feel like it is a goal of the IETF. You know, one of the goals the reasons why we go to different venues is so that we can engage with the local community, and I think professors and students are an important part of that. So just wondering if there is a plan to either have something like it or reinstate it.
Thank you for your question. So it's true that we had to put the guest day program on pause. We were having some difficulty with people who were abusing the program for the purposes of being able to travel to a particular country, and then they weren't actually local people. They were just using it to get into the country and then not showing up at the IETF meeting. So we had to make a decision on short order about that, but it's under consideration for what to do in the future. And, we're hoping to find a way that we can accommodate something similar somehow. But in the meantime, we need to figure out how to not have it be abused in that way. So it's not gone forever necessarily, but we need to work out how to make it functional.
Hi, Bob Hinden. So when Jay did the presentation earlier about future meetings, it went by sort of quickly, so I may have this wrong, but it looked like there was not a meeting in Asia year after next. Did I see that right?
Do you want to pull up? Maybe it's still back here.
No, the year after that. Yeah, next year we're going to Bangkok.
We're switching the rotation. So we're switching Asia from the November to the March slot.
So it's basically a time of year shift for when the 111s occur.
Yeah. So from 2022 onward, we're hoping to have Asia in the March slot.
But for 2021, there will be no Asia meeting.
Correct.
2 in Europe, 1 in the US.
Right.
Yeah, I would have thought maybe there would have been like an email to the list about this or something.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, because I thought we were going to do Asia every year for obvious
So
reasons.
the policy is to have roughly equal allocations between the 3 regions, but it also says that in any given year, we might not make it to every region because of this kind of fluctuation. So if you look at the meeting venue policy document, that's what it expresses.
Right, but will we catch up?
I'm sorry?
Will we catch up then? Will there be 2 meetings in Asia in 1 year?
Right. I think the point is that over time, we aspire to hit each region roughly the same number of times. So that's what we're attempting to do.
Okay, well, you understand my comment.
Yes, I think we do.
Yeah,
for sure.
again, if it was sort of, would have been nice if it was mentioned. Thank you.
Fair enough.
Hey, Jason, it's Elliot here. I just wanted to thank the LLC for the opportunity to engage on the discussion about draft LEAR, We Gotta Stop Meeting Like This, which looks at investigating new modes for meeting. It's when we met, I think I took 2 things from it. The first is that Jay is going to take on board to figure out some questions to ask that might help us in the community deliberate about how we might meet differently or how much resources we're using as we meet. Second thing I took from that so that people know is that I will continue to engage with this community so that maybe the community can bring forward approaches that they want to try over time. And so I just again want to thank you guys for not forgetting about that. And obviously you had very important things to do like hire Jay. And I look forward to working on this problem so we understand our carbon footprint, understand how we can continue to work effectively, maybe even by reducing our carbon footprint. And I'll be talking more with everybody about this soon.
Cool, thank you. Okay, great, thank you very much, appreciate it. Anything else?
Yes, the ISG can come on up. So for the ISG open mic, we're running a little experiment where try to keep the questions and the answers short and focused. So there's a timer right here. We're going to allot 2 minutes per question and 2 minutes total for the answer from the stage.
We can't see the timer.
We had signs. We can't see the timer, but we have all kinds of analog mechanisms for keeping time. Adam, can you start, please?
Adam Roach, Art Area Director. Ben Kaduk, Security Area Director.
Alexei Melnikov, Art Area Director.
Ted Hardy, IAB Chair. Roman Janelius, Security Area.
Mia Kulevin, Transport. Deborah Brungard, Routing Area.
Martin Vigo, Routing Area.
Barry Liba, Art Area.
Warren Kamari, Ops Area.
Alyssa Cooper, General Area.
Alvaro Retana, Routing.
Ignas Bagdonas, Ops.
Suresh Krishnan, Internet. Eric Vink, and used by my last name to be the last one, Internet Area.
Okay, the mic lines are open. Going once, going twice. Oh.
I will attempt not to use my full 2 minutes. I'm John Levine. I have kind of a meta question here. I have noticed. I am using the mic. Perhaps I can shout into it more loudly. Okay. Well, there's 15 seconds out of the way. My question is, I'm seeing a lot more tribalism than I have in the past, and particularly in some of the working groups I'm in. It's very unfortunate that people seem to you get people on two, well, the obvious place, for example, is Doe. I mean, there are competing people who have very clear ideas of what the right answer is, and not a very good handle on how one reaches consensus about this. And as I've mentioned a few times before, I know a lot of Quakers who have a process that everybody with them describes as consensus. And a key part of it is what they call standing aside, which is saying, you get it kind of as close to as an answer as you can, and then but it is important that you be able to say, I am not thrilled with this answer, but I don't hate it so much that I'm going to kill it. And this is different from rough consensus. Rough consensus is basically somebody says, we're close enough, and the people who hate it, too bad. Here, we ask people specifically to say, I'm in the interest of the entire group. I'm standing back because it's more important the thing goes ahead. And I'm wondering, have the rest of you noticed this? And I presume many of you have. And if so, is there any way we can kind of work on our process to try to make it more consensus-y and perhaps more productive in dealing with these very contentious topics that we are running into?
Thank you. Barry, do you want to answer them?
I think we have to rely on the working group chairs to lead this. And
Pete Resnick has been having conversations with the working group chairs, for instance, today in the working group chairs lunch, trying to help sort out how to call consensus and how to lead people into consensus. And Alyssa has been working on getting training for the working group chairs that we're going to be starting to set up soon. So I guess that's my answer.
Yeah, and sort of following on from that, this sort of taking a step back or being willing to stand back and say it's more important that it goes ahead than that I get my way, is something which needs to be learnt over time. If you have some recommendations or suggestions where you see that working that you can send that people can sort of learn from, I think would be really helpful. Often though, I see people have incredibly strong views. And so having somebody be willing to actually say, you know, I'm willing to take a step back is tricky. But yeah, if you can send hints, pointers, that would be helpful.
Yeah, I think to answer the first half of your question, yes, I think more of us have seen that. And another thing that I would add is that some of the steps that we're trying to take to help sort of improve the general conduct are related to things that we can do to get people to think about what are the actual disagreements and what is best for the internet as a whole, and maybe facilitate that sort of standing back that you described.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Wes Hardiker, ISI, and I'm here to answer John's question. And a number of you have heard this speech from me this week alone, but the reality is that we have a culture in the IETF where we desire to poke holes in somebody's technical statements and technical plans without really considering if there's any good parts you want to make use of. And so rather than looking for the good parts, we'll get a line of 20 people that want to, poke a hole, and often the same hole that the person before them, just found. It does start with the working group chairs. It does start with the IESG members, and to talk to the person that asked the question about what can we do to get more appointees to the IESG members. We need a better environment where people are rewarded for actually helping and actually participating, as opposed to standing on two sides of a fence and just refusing to even look over the fence to see the other side and whether the grass is even there. That's going to take work not just from the IESG members, not just from the working group chairs. It's going to take work from the whole community. And I encourage to go back to the non-com person that was asking about, how do we select who's going to be appointed into a position. We need to select a culture that's going to be positive and constructive and not just destructive. It's important to point out weaknesses in a technical argument. It's also important to fix those technical weaknesses rather than just point them out.
Thank you. Bob?
Two things. I don't like the timer, but that's not what I came up to talk about, but I wanted to let you know. So there was a recent discussion on the IETF list about the role of area directors and how much work they have to do or don't do, or all of that. And I thought that was interesting. And, as we, you can see from the NOMCOM report, it's hard to fill your jobs. So I'd like to hear from you guys, and you don't need to do it in whatever the timer says. But I'd like to get your feedback on, how we can make this not such an impossible job, so we get a bigger pool of people to select. Thank you.
So thank you for your question. We had a discussion of this in the ISG day before yesterday, and we felt that the discussion on the list had gone in many different directions, and that as a first step, what we thought would be useful would be to just draw up a list and sort of categorize the various different parts of the problem and directions that this conversation had gone in. There's also a lot of history here. Many IESGs have discussed this problem, been faced with similar non-com statistics. So we thought as a baseline, it might be useful to just outline what the set of issues are that have been raised. and try to structure our own thinking and discussion that way, instead of, the mailing list threads. And another part of our discussion was also around the perception of how much time the AD role takes, and that although we disclose this in the job descriptions and whatnot, that it still might not be clear exactly what the range is of the amount of time that various different ADs dedicate to the job and do so successfully. So that's another item or one of the items that we could potentially try to clarify. Other people want to share their thoughts? Suresh?
Yeah, thanks, Bob. So one of the things we noticed was that a lot of the things in there have been suggested and tried before as well. So that's kind of why we want to collect all those things and talk about previous experiences on some of these things, right? Like the directorates, what worked, what didn't work. So we want to take some time to come up with a comprehensive answer over there on what we think about what's come up there.
Yeah, and I would also add that the amount of work that it takes to be an AD is to a large extent dependent on what you want to make it take. I mean, if you don't feel a need to put in all of your time, it's definitely possible to do the job in less time than some of us are putting in.
Any other questions? All right, thank you. Yeah, that's it. Sorry. Yes, plenary is over. Thank you.